I had a 7 brew yesterday, and it was good.
What is that?
You don't know 7 brew? 7 brew is just Dutch Bros, but it's called 7 brew.
Oh, here, that's Aroma Joe's.
Oh. I do like a 7 brew. It's interesting because there is actually a Dutch Bros in Louisville, but I live directly.
Really?
There is, but I live directly next to the 7 brew, so instead I go to 7 brew.
I guess that makes sense. There's one in Georgia, so I guess it makes sense there would be one in Kentucky. I don't know. Working there was a distant memory from a part of my life that feels like I could just like cut it out and it would be like it never happened.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's how I feel about the 2 years I worked for the Disability Resource Center on campus, driving the disability golf carts.
Wait, Aubrey, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, for 2 years, my on-campus job was that at ASU, they had disability golf carts where if you were somebody who had difficulties for any reason getting to your classes, we would pick you up in a golf cart and take you anywhere on campus. And so there was a schedule, usually of like a certain amount of people who would get picked up and taken to different buildings, but then we would also be on call, because if somebody was like, hello, I am disabled and I need to get to a building, we would just go and pick them up and take them. Yeah, it was a fucking baller job. I loved it.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, but again, it's like, I think often of like the people I worked with at that job, and it's like, I don't even think, would I recognize them? If I saw them, would they recognize me?
Yeah. I have a couple of friends who I worked with at Dutch Bros who, shout out to Grace, who I know listens to the podcast. But it's because it's like, so I graduated college with my theater degree and then into the pandemic, because I graduated in 2020. So into the pandemic, literally was going insane in my parents' house, got this job at Dutch Bros in August of 2020 and started working there. And then I moved to New York like a year and a half later and then just did the thing I would have been doing had I moved to New York and the pandemic never happened. And so it's just sort of like, there's like this whole, and I think it's why I kind of always feel 2 years younger than I am, because there's this full 2 years of my life that just like didn't really have this huge impact on everything that has happened since. Mm-hmm. And so it's just very bizarre.
Speaking of things that are very bizarre, hello and welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast hosted by one modern goatee and one ancient beard. I'm Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
I'm Mackenna Goodrich. Wow, that's so interesting. Aubrey, are you going to be mad if I think you're a modern goatee?
No, I do think I'm a modern goatee.
Okay, great. I think you're a modern goatee and I'm an ancient beard.
This week we are talking about body hair. Specifically, we're talking about the removal of face and body hair. Sort of a departure from our usual content, because today we are doing zero media analysis.
Whoa.
That said, if you have a favorite hairy person in media, send us an email about them at informedattraction@gmail.com.
Do I have a favorite hairy person in media?
Bigfoot.
Wow. He's the cryptid who'd be the chillest to blaze with.
My favorite hairy person. I mean, I love a dark-featured man, and oftentimes being a hairy man also comes in line with that.
I feel like when I think about like just like hairy people in Hollywood, it's mostly just like a lot of like iconic mustaches, you know?
Oh, I immediately go to like the hairy chest.
See, but I can't even picture a hairy chest in my brain right now that isn't just like disembodied. Like there's no face associated with it. It's just chest.
Unfortunately, the person who my mind immediately conjures is Russell Brand.
That's me shooting.
I mean, but I think that's just because he wore those low V's.
Yeah.
And so we always saw the chest hair. Isn't,
hairy Hollywood men, I'm Googling.
Doesn't Henry Cavill have a hairy chest?
Okay,
I feel like Henry Cavill's Oh, and Mark Ruffalo, of course.
Oh, of course. Hairy Hollywood men. I think I maybe was picturing
probably John. I feel like John Hamm probably is hairy too.
I mean, famously, Tom Selleck is a hairy man, both in his iconic mustache and in his iconic hairy chest. I'm looking at a list of Men's Health hairy men. Okay, Jake Gyllenhaal probably is right. He's just so boyish in the face that I forget how hairy he is, but he is hairy.
No, he's a hairy man.
He is a hairy man, and I was gonna be like, no, and then I was like, wait, it's just because he's so boyish in the face, actually. Yes. Oh, Henry Cavill is, look at that. Look at that. Yeah. That is actually I think that's whose chest I was picturing when I was picturing a disembodied. Oh, David Hasselhoff. famously hairy man.
Of course.
Okay. They were showing Shawn Mendes, who had the littlest amount of chest hair I've ever seen on a boy. Fuck. Sorry, it's defying me. Men's Health, you have too many ads on your website, and it's really messed up. Some of these men are not hairy. They just have a little bit of hair on their Mark Ruffalo's here. Hair on their chest, and they're like, it's a hairy man. And I'm like, no, he has regular chest hair. Oh, Jude Law. Jude Law's kind of a hairy man.
Oh, I love that. I love a hairy man. I love a hairy woman. I love a hairy body. I will say, though, one thing that in conversations about body hair that always irks me a little bit, and not even specifically conversations about body hair, but when people talk about oftentimes like weight stigma or like feminism, there's like an immediate like need to like equate it to sexuality, where like people are like, fat people deserve rights. Yeah, I fucking love having sex with fat people. Women deserve rights, and women shouldn't be shackled by body image issues. And they're like, I fucking love hairy pussies. And it's like, let's disentangle these things.
Yeah.
Body hair is a loaded topic for many people. It is something that is mysteriously unloaded for me. Despite all of the issues that I have, I've really never been hung up on body hair at all. I think that's because I'm really fortunate in that most of my, like, body hair is blonde and fine, so it's really not very noticeable, so no one has ever really shamed me for body hair in any way. I also, though, was getting waxed when I was, like, 12, so hair removal was always just kind of a norm in my household. Now, in the modern day, I shave sometimes, and I don't shave other times. I'm coming at you right now from fat, hairy, sweaty summer. And I think that today, I might just remove it all. Because my mom is visiting me this weekend. And it's weird when my mom sees me hairy because she makes it weird. But yeah, I never really feel that strongly about my own body hair. I shaved a lot when I was younger, but it's really been in the past few years I've just leaned more into not shaving, genuinely because I think I went from living in the desert to somewhere where it snows, so there's just more time of the year where my body is completely covered. But again, I'm just super ambivalent about it. Mackenna, what is your history with body hair?
Wow, Aubrey. So in the way where it's super unloaded for Aubrey, would you believe that it's a super loaded topic for me, Mackenna Goodrich? I, despite currently being blonde, have naturally extremely dark, thick hair. Shout out to the great nation of Germany for my heritage. So I have extremely thick, dark body hair. I grow it in... Like, I don't really deal with, like, a mustache. Like, I don't really grow with places where people would be, or, like, I don't really ever get, like, chest hair or anything like that, or, like, on my stomach. I very much do grow it in, like, the places that, like, if you picture a woman in your mind, you would picture a woman having body hair, but it is very thick and dark in those stereotypical places, right? I have never shaved my arms. I should say, I have shaved my arms. I have never regularly shaved my arms, because the first time I did it, I was like, why the fuck did I do that? That was stupid. It's just arm hair. Who cares? That's where that ends, because I don't anymore, but I used to have frequent panic attacks about my hairy ass toes. I have extremely hairy toes and feet. Somebody
just started jerking off.
Well,
somebody just started jerking off when they heard
You're
that.
welcome. I did very, very hairy legs, and I grow very thick underarm hair. Now, so that was a thing that always made me really uncomfortable. Now I am someone who identifies as non-binary, and so now I get to do whatever I want, and no one can get mad at me because if they do, they're being transphobic. Yes! If I'm going on a date, I will usually shave because men are weird. If I'm going on a date with a man, I will shave because men are weird. I have had a lot of male friends lovingly ask me why I don't shave my armpits, and I'm like, do you shave your armpits? And they're like, well, that's interesting. And I'm like, isn't it? The other side important thing to note here, I experience trichotillomania, which if you don't know what trichotillomania is, it's where you pull out your body hair. So I largely do not shave anymore. However, in times of high stress, I start pulling out body hair. Specifically for me, what I tend to pull out is my pubic hair and my underarm hair. And then in times of extremely high stress, I start pulling out my eyebrows and my head hair. Usually, if I am starting to get into a time where I am pulling hair, that is a time where I will shave, because then there is no hair to pull. And that makes things easier for me, because then I have to find other ways of dealing with the stress I'm experiencing. There were multiple times in college where I would basically like lose half an eyebrow because I would just be mindlessly pulling out hair because of how stressed I was. That has not happened in a really long time. It's been a really long time since I've been someone who pulled out face or head hair, but I do still have spells of pulling out both pubic and underarm hair. And so if I have shaved one of those places, that is probably why. That's it. My mom still shaves her entire body despite being in a monogamous marriage for a very long time and having no real reason to. Anyway.
And some people, it's just a preference, and that's fine. I don't know. I've thought a lot recently about choice feminism and this whole idea of people being like, yep, if a woman can choose it, it means it's feminist. And it's like, it's not. If you choose to be a trad wife, you're not feministing rather, because you are a woman who made a choice. You're perpetuating misogyny. But as I'm going to get into in this episode, when we talk about the history of hair removal, I really just don't think it's as cut and dry as some people like to say, where like having all of your hair makes you woke feminist and removing your hair makes you trad wife. There's a long history of people removing their hair throughout history that is not entirely rooted in oppression. And at the end of the day, like, this is one of those things where I truly do think it is a personal choice that, like, you as an individual can kind of just do whatever you feel like, and that will probably change throughout your life, because it does for most people.
Right, totally.
The big thing I want to say is that hair is never just hair. Body hair, in particular, has several biological functions. It serves to have insulation for your body, protection, pheromone distribution, and signaling puberty. I'm actually working with a student right now who's working on her undergrad thesis, and she's interested in pubertal development and self-regulation. So basically, whether you're an early or late bloomer, whether that affects your effort for... Basically, she's interested in whether early and late bloomers differ in their effortful... Basically, she's interested in whether early and late bloomers differ in their effortful control, which is the ability to shift attention. So she's somebody who's interested in doing, like, ADHD research in the future, and basically right now she's interested in, like, the ways in which the processes related to puberty relate to effortful control, which is related to ADHD. And one of the things that we look at when we look at pubertal development is body hair.
Right. Totally.
There are sex differences with body hair. So typically men exhibit thicker and more conspicuous... Men typically exhibit thicker body hair than women, but both men and women have visible body hair on their head, eyebrows, eyelashes, armpits, genital areas, arms, and legs. Men might also have thicker hair growth on their face, abdomen, back, buttocks, anus, areolas, chest, nostrils, and ears. But that being said, hair ranges wildly and widely, and there are women who are hairier than men, and there are men who are hairier than women. It just kind of depends on the roll of the dice of your genetic factors.
Early SciShow, back in ye olden days, there was a guy who would constantly comment this question, and I think send it into our quick questions inbox about butt hair, about like why do we have butt hair. And so we did eventually answer that question, and I can't remember how many views it has, but it has some insane amount of views. Why do people have butt hair? SciShow. This is from 10 years ago. It has 4.2 million views.
Well, it's probably because there are people who have hairy asses and then they wipe their ass and they're like, "What's the purpose of this?" And then
Yeah.
they go to the YouTubes.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And there's an answer from one Hank Green at letting you know why. And basically, the thing about butt hair is we don't totally know. There's lots of theories about it, but there's no like definitive we have butt hair because X reason. It's there's a bunch of theories about it.
Right. Well, and it makes sense too that it's like we have hair on our genitals, our butts are close to our genitals. We are descended from monkeys that just got hair everywhere.
Aubrey, you ever think about the difference in the taint?
No,
Okay, I guess it's just me.
just you. You're the
I
only
think it's so crazy that there's like no space between my butthole and my vagina, but men have like the biggest valley in the world. And I just feel like that's unfair evolutionarily because that means I'm more likely to get. There's so many more reasons why I'm more likely to get a UTI than a man, but I have to think that the proximity of my butthole to my vagina is part of it. And I think about it constantly.
I think that we should cut the taints of all men, and that is how we will find gender equality.
I also want to say that I listen to 2 podcasts that are hosted by a panel of 3 men, and both of those podcasts have done an extended bit about the taint. There was an episode of Side Stories on the last podcast on the left where they were all measuring their taints. And also there's a bit on The Worst of All Possible Worlds where AJ does an extended bit about having a dangly taint. And Brian doesn't like that bit. So
I don't
boys
like
are
that
always
either.
talking about what?
I don't like that either. AJ, you're disgusting. Get off my screen. Our bodies also need hair, so shout out to my friend Loie, who, when I told her about this episode, said, "Are you going to talk about Lanugo?" So this is me talking about Lanugo. Lanugo is the very fine and soft hair. Lanugo.
Lanugo.
Yeah. Why don't we go
down to Lanugo.
Well, if you have Lanugo, you're either a baby or you immediately need to be institutionalized. Because
much like the Beach Boys.
Yes.
That's who sings that song?
Yes. Lanugo is the very fine and soft hair that you usually see on fetuses and people who have severe eating disorders. Basically, when your body loses fat, it can't regulate your temperature anymore, and Lanugo is your body's emergency adaptation to conserving heat. Not everybody with a severe eating disorder will develop Lanugo, but it is commonly seen in people who have severe anorexia because your body wants you to stay alive. Eating disorders are very fascinating diseases because your body will try to keep you alive the entire time you are trying to kill it. And it goes without saying that humans also assign social meaning to hair. So body hair can communicate masculinity and femininity, as well as age, social class, professionalism, rebellion. And hair removal might be practiced for cultural, aesthetic, hygienic, sexual, medical, or religious reasons. Forms of hair removal have been practiced in almost all human cultures since at least the Neolithic era. The methods that have been used to remove hair have varied from time and region, and for centuries, hair removal has long shaped gender roles, serving to signify social status and defining notions of femininity and the ideal body image.
Okay, now this actually has nothing to do with anything, but Aubrey, the way you just said Neolithic sounded like the way that people say gnocchi. You really hit us with a silent G at the beginning of Neolithic, and I was like, give me some freaking prehistoric pasta, baby. Give me that Neolithic. That Neolithic shit.
This is bagel all over again.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for bringing this. Hey, listen, I lived my whole life with everyone making fun of me for my fake Midwest accent. So I get to have a little bit as a treat sometimes.
Gnocchi had to be the first pasta, right?
What was the first pasta? I feel like I should know this.
We weren't starting with fusilli. That had to be innovated.
Okay.
Because I'm sure the first pasta has to just be some kind of like fucking flour dumpling that you
pasta
cook.
Zero.
Yeah.
The earliest mentions of food lists 4 pillar. What if I killed myself? 4 pillar pastas: macaroni, ravioli, gnocchi, and vermicelli.
Okay. I feel like of those four, gnocchi to me is the most intuitive to have come first.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, I gotta make a little dough ball before I am folding more food around the dough ball.
History. Okay, evidence of Etruscans making pasta dates back to 400 BCE.
And they were also maybe trying to remove hair from their pussies.
And that's what being a woman is all about. Making
pasta.
dough and shaving your pussy.
I'm going to track us through the history of
pasta.
Hair removal. I would do and pasta, which, I mean, we could do and pasta simultaneously.
We just do 2 parallel timelines where we talk through the history of hair removal and be like, and in the pasta world, what was going on was we finally invented, orecchiette.
Yeah, this is how I'm going to explain correlation is not causation in my next statistics class.
And I'm going to be in my conspiracy theory class being like, you can see a direct correlation between the invention of diddlini and when we started getting there.
As pasta moved from being noodles that are long to more shapes, we noticed that women started removing their body hair more. What does it mean?
What does it mean? Who is Pepe Sylvia?
So, somebody is going to look at this timeline and be like, what are you pulling from? It's mainly vibes. So
and that's how Aubrey got her PhD too, mainly vibe.
I'm gonna lead us through like ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, and then I'm just gonna skip to Europe and then the United States. This isn't because there was nothing happening in hair removal in like China or something, but I'm tracking this through like a lens of how did we US white Americans get to where we are with hair removal. So I'm tracking that kind of through the lens of like the like dominant ancient cultures and then like what's happening with white people, because as we know, the victors write the history books. So in ancient Egypt, men and women both removed body hair as status indicators and cleanliness, and it was considered fashionable to have no body hair.
Once again, thought you were going to say fascist.
The condition of being hairless was mostly done as a way to keep the body clean, and they would use flint, seashells, beeswax, and other utensils and exfoliator substances, some of which are highly questionable and highly caustic. Because if something can burn the hair off of your body, it's probably bad for you to ingest it. Hair removal also was a treatment for louse infestation, which was a really prevalent issue in ancient Egypt. So ancient Egyptian priests would also shave their entire body daily to present as a pure body before the images of gods. So, you know, in ancient Egypt, basically you have this likely from the issues of like cleanliness, people needing to remove body hair, and then as a response to that, it also becomes like fashionable and something that's really normalized and even esteemed, right? Because if you have body hair, it means that you might get a louse infestation, and that's no good. That's no good for anybody.
No, I don't like that. Aubrey, you ever had lice?
No.
I have.
When did you get lice?
I got it from a girl in my Girl Scout troop when I was like 11.
Wow. That's a great time to get lice. I think that's when most people get lice, but
my hair was so long. It was so, like, I have so much hair. My hair was so long. I wanted to die.
Yeah. What did you have to like shave your head, or what happened?
No, we did the shampoo, and then also I was flat ironing my hair every day, because if you flat iron near your scalp, that'll kill the eggs. And so we were using the shampoo to kill off the live bugs, and then I was flat ironing my hair every day to kill off but it took like, me and my little brother both got it, because then I gave it to him. And Trey has long curly hair. At the time, had long curly hair too. And so we were just in a nightmare hell world for like 5 days.
Yeah, that's my nightmare. One time I thought I saw a bug on Butters, and so I washed her with
punted her
everything.
into the sun.
Yes.
Well, that's the thing you have to worry about here in New Hampshire. There's ticks. So
I know.
Whenever the dogs come inside, I'm like checking them for ticks. I'm checking myself for ticks.
I don't like that. I choose to just pretend that they don't exist.
And maybe if I was a hairless woman, I'd be tickless. But alas, I am not. And so Bitches love me. And by bitches, I mean ticks.
Then in ancient Greece and Rome,
They like those boys hairless.
they did like those boys hairless. They liked the
Yeah.
women hairless too. Hair removal was associated with status. So a person with smooth skin was associated with purity and superiority. And removing body hair was done by both men and women because, as we all know, the true beauty standard was pretty pubescent boys. Hair removal.
Hey!
Yay!
Hey!
That's my boy?
I'm punting myself into the sun. I'm walking into the woods, never to return.
Hair removal in ancient Greece and Rome was largely done through waxing, and also tweezing. So early, shockingly early did humanity invent the tweezers. Like, I feel like tweezers should have just come about in like the 1980s, but nope, ancient cultures basically had tweezers, which is really fascinating to me because it feels like it should be very modern. But yeah, people just wanted to get those little hairs.
I guess I get it.
But I'm just like, we basically had tweezers before we had electricity. I mean, I guess it makes sense a lot easier to get something that makes like that pulls a hair than
there's less science involved in making pinchy guy than there is in making current flow.
Yeah.
But I'm always curious with things like tweezers, like, who was the person who had the first thought, you know? Of like, wow, I really wish something that wasn't my fingers could do this.
Well, right. And that's what's interesting, too, is that it's like a lot of like ancient cultures, tweezing your hair comes up through a lot of them. So I think it also is one of those things that literally did develop simultaneously, which I think is so fascinating, right? Because also that's like the thing with all this hair removal stuff is that really across the globe, people were removing their hair without necessarily like having conversation about hair removal.
Yeah.
Yeah, a pair of bronze tweezers attributed to the Minoan civilization in 2900 BC.
That's crazy.
I know.
People were like, get this monkey hair off of me. I'm a human being. Let me be pure.
Gender affirmation? I guess so.
Gender, I hardly know her. Minoan, I hardly know him. Oh! Bam! Bang! On fire! I've been hanging out with teen boys all week. It's a problem.
Ancient Greeks also had a term to specifically describe a slave who would attend to bathers and remove their unwanted body hair. So there was a term for a male slave and a female slave whose main thing was just getting rid of body hair, which, like, crazy.
Can I say something about the Greeks?
Yeah.
We gotta stop being laudatory of these guys. I don't like basically anything they were up to. We like them too much. We like them too much. We talk about them too much. We're crashing out over them too much. These guys were freaks. They were freaks.
Well, right. And it's because everybody loves Greek mythology.
And you know what? You ever read Greek mythology? You ever actually read about what Zeus was up to? I don't want to talk about Zeus anymore. That man was scary.
He was doing a lot of raping.
He was doing a lot of raping. And a lot of raping as an animal. A lot of turning into a goose in order to sexually assault a human woman.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about him anymore.
Then
everyone go see Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey in theaters now.
I know. Christopher Nolan at gmail.com. Where is the scene where Anne Hathaway is getting a slave in the bathhouse to remove her pubes? give me the extended cut. Now to transition to Europe in the Middle Ages, because nothing happened between ancient Greece and Europe in the medieval ages.
Aubrey, in your research, and I'm sure just because of like anthropological realities and stuff like that, people just don't have enough information. Were you finding that in like ancient Asian and African cultures, any of this was coming up?
So one thing that is interesting about like Asian cultures is I had thought that Asian culture would be much more, anti-hair. Asian culture is kind of notoriously pretty pro-hair, even to the modern day. Like, there is a like type of plastic surgery that women get in Korea in order to have more pubic hair. Like it's considered like a sign of fertility and beauty. And again, I'm not speaking to all like, I'm not trying to paint all like Korean people as a monolith. I'm just saying that in the research that I've seen, there's a lot less like stigma and anti-body hair sentiment in Asia than in the West. Like it is pretty like constrained to specifically the United States culture that is like still really anti-body hair.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. As long as I shave my body hair and use normal pronouns.
You know what?
And use the pronouns assigned to me. There we go.
There we go. Let me see, because I did have a note. Yeah, is specifically in China, body hair has really been regarded as normal, and even today, Chinese women report feeling less social pressure to remove body hair than American women. And the same attitude really extends to other countries in Asia. So while hair removal has become routine for younger women in Asia, that's really been a result of like US influence rather than like Asian influence the other way. Which is interesting, right? Because I feel like I see a lot of like women online who talk about like K-pop girls and they're like, "Oh my god, like their skin is so smooth and hairless and so beautiful." But like part of the reason why that beauty standard exists is because of American influence on Korean culture.
And I'm proud to be an American, where we spread our culture imperially.
So in the Middle Ages, there was less emphasis on body hair because bathing practices changed, which means people stunk. People were fucking stinky.
Hey, can I tell you who are stinky? Can I tell you who else are stinky? Teen boys. Well, yes, of course. Teen boys. Hello, teen boys. Teen boys, I'm here. I know at least one of you listens to this podcast. Teen boys. Number 1, deodorant. Heard of it? I got some Dr. Squatch sitting right over there. Put it on your body. Number 2, though. I know some of you are using deodorant, but the thing that you're not doing, showering. I need you to shower. I need you to shower. There are a few boys who I love so much. They're dear boys at this youth theater I'm working at, who I want to write home to their parents and say, I need you to force your son into a shower.
Yeah.
Because stinky. Stinky, 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 stinky.
The face was the only area where hair growth was really considered unsightly. In the 14th century, women would pick hair from their foreheads in order to recede their hairline and give their face a more oval form. I did a TikTok about this once, and people were like, awesome. So yeah, there's basically...
Thank God that hasn't come back.
Just the uncanniness of plucking your forehead hair to give yourself more of an egghead.
Bruh, I have like a little baby bitch forehead too. Like I got like a 3 head basically.
I got a 5 head.
And you will not catch me removing any of my hairs in order to have a bigger forehead. I would look friggin' insane, brother.
From the mid-16th century, when Queen Elizabeth I came to power, she made eyebrow removal fashionable. So basically, there was a straight up like 200-year period where women were removing the hair on their hairline to have a bigger forehead and also removing their eyebrows. So just a egg, me as Uncle Fester tomorrow, a egg.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is every single friggin' movie about this period is just wrong and they should all have no eyebrows?
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's like... But it would be unsightly for a modern audience, especially when we want to like find that woman attractive.
I don't want to find that woman attractive. I want to find her period accurate. You know what? Hey, racists on the internet. Hello, I'm speaking directly to the racists on the internet. If you're mad about Lupita Nyong'o being in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey in theaters now, you better be mad about every woman who's ever played someone from the Elizabethan era who's rich having eyebrows. I want to see you be mad about both. Actually, I want to see you be mad about neither. Please stop being mad about stupid shit like that.
Yeah. In 1760, when the first safety straight razor appeared for men to safely shave their beard and not cut themselves, women
Telling the
also
tale of
started to
Sweeney
use this
Todd.
safety razor. Yes, that's true. It wasn't until the late 19th century that women in Europe and the United States started to make hair removal a component of their personal care regime. Crazy person who we can attribute shame around body hair to, Charles Darwin.
I really thought you were gonna say Charlie Kirk.
We are Charlie Kirk.
We are Charlie Kirk. Okay, sorry, Charles Darwin did what to the turtles?
So, according to Rebecca Herzig, who's a professor of gender and sexuality studies at Bates College, the modern day notion of body hair being unwomanly can be traced back to Charles Darwin's book, first published in 1871, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. So Darwin's theory of natural selection associated body hair with primitive ancestry and a return to earlier, less developed forms. Darwin also suggested that having less body hair was an indication of being more evolved and more sexually attractive. So, as Darwin's ideas polarized, other 19th century medical and scientific experts started to link hairlessness to sexual inversion, disease pathology, lunacy, and criminal violence. And those connotations were mostly applied to women and not men's body hair. And part of this really reminded me of the book Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings, which gets into the ideas about eugenics and racism as it relates to beauty standards during this time period. Even though that book is about anti-fat bias, it's also about how during this time period, white women needed to be distanced from black women, and the beauty standards of the time that developed were largely to say, here is what white women should look like, and it's the opposite of how we characterize what black women look like. And hairiness is part of that.
I'm not shocked that a lot of this has a racial undertone. That is not surprising to me in the least. Also, may I say, another thing I want to stop hearing about. Okay, so on Mackenna's outlist, the Greeks. Also on Mackenna's outlist, great white men scientists. Please stop talking to me about Charles Darwin. Please stop talking to me. Frankly, stop talking to me about Albert Einstein. I don't want to hear about him anymore. Put him in a box.
What's Albert Einstein done for me lately?
What?
What's Albert Einstein done for me lately?
Nothing. He's dead.
Exactly. By the early 20th century, the upper and middle class white America increasingly saw smooth skin as a marker of femininity, and female body hair was seen as repulsive, with hair removal giving a way to separate oneself from cruder people, lower class people, and immigrants. In 1915, the magazine Harper's Bazaar was the first women's magazine to run a campaign devoted to the removal of underarm hair as a necessity. So all of this leads us to talking about the Gillette Revolution of 1915. But part of why I wanted to set this historical precedent was because I often see Instagram infographics where people make this claim that until the Gillette Revolution, nobody cared about body hair, and then Gillette invented this insecurity, and it's not entirely true. What is true is that Gillette was the first successful company to, brand convincing women that their body hair was actually a problem, but there is a historical precedent for this belief that was already floating around in the culture. The company Gillette did not invent the idea that body hair is bad.
No, I think that's okay. I think that's such a crazy thing to believe because it's obviously pretty much every product that is being sold to you successfully has a root in some sort of social idea that has been percolating around, because otherwise you did not just fall from a coconut tree. How would Gillette have gotten that idea?
Well, right. And it's why some of the insecurities that I think people try to brand now, they don't take as well. I don't know that hip dips are ever going to truly become.
Well, because what's the solution to it?
Right. It's really hard to sell the thing that's going to get rid of it.
Right. We historically have not, I mean, that's interesting. Whereas, I think that if we harken back to our plastic surgery episode, there's also a lot of ancient, and old plastic surgery evidence, you know, like we
Mhm.
talked about in that episode. And so it's like, that's a thing that like forever, which is why you're going to have an easier time than thrusting like Botox on people, because people have been having these insecurities ever.
Right. So Gillette's advertising emphasized that shaving one's body hair, especially the underarms, was hygienic, and that visible body hair was gross and embarrassing. They wrote that
Because it is.
It's true. They wrote that the Gillette razor solves, quote, an embarrassing personal problem and keeps the underarm white and smooth. We must also not forget the word white being a priority, because all of this stems from this, like, white supremacist desire to differentiate white women from black women. Mackenna is fully showing off their pits, so now I'm showing off my pits.
I, again, appear to be a blonde woman at the moment, but let me tell you, the dark black hair growing out of my underarm belies a different tale. Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, and I have
It looks like a shadow.
yeah, I have dark hair on my head because it's my natural hair color, and just blonde. I also have blonde eyebrows and eyelashes though, which is the trade-off of that.
Yeah. But hey, it's trendy to have bleached brows right now too.
I know. You know, as time wears on, right? So there's increased popularity in many countries of women wearing fashion clothing, sportswear, and swimsuits that expose parts of the body where hair is commonly found. And what we tend to see tracking with that is that, like, as hemlines get shorter, there's more of a push of like, you should be shaving your legs that are now exposed. You're wearing a swimsuit where there's, you know, no sleeves. You should now be shaving your underarms and things like that.
Let me tell you a little story right here. So I went to a bathhouse in New York recently, the bathhouse brand bathhouse, because someone who I was dog sitting for like got me a day there as like a thank you for dog sitting for them. And it was the winter, mind you. It's very cold outside. This was like March, I think. So very cold outside. And I go and I have my little swimsuit on. I'm by myself and I put my swimsuit on and I realize really rocking a hairy bikini line at this point. And I'm looking around, and that is not what's happening in the bathroom of this Williamsburg bathhouse. So then I am in the bathroom of the bathhouse, plucking my bikini line out like a monster in the bathroom of the bathhouse, just pulling out my pubic hair in the bathroom, because I'm like, it can't. I'm already like I want to be relaxed. I don't want to be thinking about people being like, ew, gross. And so I was literally in the bathroom like, and then I was still stressed out anyway because it was the day after Valentine's Day and so many people were making out in the pools.
Yeah. I've been recently having to change in the dressing room for this show, and I'm like, I bet everyone can tell how unshaved I am right now. Whatever. Then I'm just rocking out. So
rocking with my cock out.
Rocking with my bush out.
Mm-hmm.
Call it
crushing with my bush out.
Nope,
I can't. I got nothing.
In World War II, or during World War II,
grooving with my pubes out.
So during the 1940s, shaving legs becomes more commonplace during World War II because nylon shortages meant that bare legs were visible. Ladies used to wear nylon stockings. You can't get nylon because there is a war coming, and so.
What war?
The Second Great War.
There was a war?
Uh-huh.
What was it over?
The world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nothing else? That was it?
Yeah. States' rights.
Oh, Aubrey's a Holocaust denier. Okay, anyways, keep going.
So the nylon shortages meant that women weren't wearing their nylon stockings, so bare legs were visible, and basically constant negging from advertisers made more women want to remove their body hair. Then in the 1960s, it becomes more trendy for feminist and women in the hippie subculture to refrain from hair removal, but then this bounces back in the 1980s with a hard overcorrection. This is something that I also hear talked about, is the transition of women's pubic hair in pornography. So like in the 60s and 70s, most women had like a lot of bush in their in pornography, and then in the 1980s everything becomes smooth and hair is removed, and that becomes the look that is the most like sexualized and sought after. And I would really say that from the 1980s onward, I think hair removal has been more common than not.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
right now is considered pretty expected and routine. The thing that I think I see the most of is like the shower routines on TikTok always emphasize shaving as part of the everything shower. And it's kind of true, right? Because I even notice for me when I think about, oh, I'm going to do my everything shower, shaving is a part of that.
See, and for me, shaving is always now in my adult life because it's not my like default setting. It's always me doing it in a sheer fucking panic because either I've started pulling my hair out or the brain worms have gone, you're going on a... So like my legs right now aren't very hairy because I probably shaved my legs, when did I go on a date with Philadelphia guy? I shaved before I went on a date recently, but it was in a sheer panic of like, I have to shave my legs now. And so I'm never planning to shave. I'm always shaving in a moment of sheer crisis.
So that is my little so that was my little introduction into specifically kind of the history of like women's body hair removal. And I want to do a little segue now and a sort of similar timeline about trends in men's facial hair. Because actually when I was kind of tracking all of this and writing my notes down, I think that you can track a lot of trends in men's facial hair to ideas around masculinity.
Pasta.
Yes, to pasta and to masculinity.
Thank God.
So basically, starting in the ancient world, big beards were associated with wisdom, but soldiers were often encouraged to shave with the rationale that enemies could grab onto one's beard in battle. And I find that so interesting because it was Alexander the Great who made his soldiers shave, and up to the modern day, military fashion largely prohibits facial hair until very recently.
And also head hair. I mean, they also all shave their heads, too.
Yeah, there was a whole thing that I thought about going into with this about rituals around shaving, but I thought that led more into like, I don't know, baldness than like what we're talking about with body hair. But yeah, like there have been many militaries and cults and religions where part of the practices involve shaving your head so that you like don't have that independent identity and you become more of one person in a collective group.
Also, Alexander the Great, was he like weird about boys? He was Greek, probably, right?
Probably.
Sorry for slandering Alexander the Great.
Hashtag not all Greeks, but like kind of a lot of them.
And we're talking present day. Obviously, that's not the ancient.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about modern day people who live in Greece right now.
100%.
What percentage of Informed Attracted listeners are in Greece right now?
Oh, let me tell you. I can actually tell you right now. Hey, also shout out to the great nation of Japan. You guys have really been showing up recently.
Let's fucking
Singapore,
go.
Singapore, you're always there. Don't worry, Singapore. We still love you, Singapore.
Singapore tour when? I've always wanted to go to Singapore.
Okay, I'm trying to remember where I find this information, even though I literally look at the stats constantly because I'm addicted. Okay, so Singapore is our second biggest country at 7.44%.
Let's fucking go.
Let me find Greece. Where are you, Greece? We have had, Aubrey, and this is true, 2 downloads ever from Greece.
Which means we can say anything about Greece right now and they're not gonna know. That means that we just have to start saying the most inflammatory comments we can about the nation of Greece until somebody sends it to enough Greek people, that we become the most hated podcast in Greece. We're going to do a tour of Singapore and be banned from the nation of Greece.
Can I say, Greece is currently being beat by Cyprus, where we have 3 listens.
Let's fucking go, Cyprus.
Let's fucking go, Cyprus.
So, yeah, When men's safety razors became more common in the early 20th century, businesses started to encourage men to shave their face, and a clean-shaven face was considered professional. So then we cue 1960s counterculture when long hair and beards become anti-establishment symbols. One thing that I think is really interesting on this topic of hair removal is that in the United States during the Vietnam War, conservative students would sometimes attack hippies by taking them and forcefully shaving their beards and cutting their hair, which is just meant to demean and, like, I don't know. That's just, like, it's such a fucked up thing to do and, like, is an act of violence.
Yeah, no, that's bad. Hey, so I'm just gonna say, I don't like that.
Yeah. So then in the 1980s, right, you have the overcorrection to the corporate clean shave. And I think the corporate clean shave, I will say, I think really stays trendy until the 2010s hipster beard boom. And what I find so fascinating about hipster beards is that at the time, and I think even retrospectively, there's a thing of hipsters being like soy boys and being emasculated. But like, if you just look at a picture of a like stereotypical hipster guy with like the clean trimmed beard, that is like stereotypically rugged masculinity. And that's a very fascinating contrast to like a lot of the looks maxing guys that I see now who are totally clean shaven and to me evoke more of the pretty boy look.
Absolutely. I think we're doing a little bit of a wraparound. I'm just gonna keep bringing him up in episodes until we do a full episode about him. But like we've talked about this before when we in the Chris Farley episode with Patrick Swayze, that like I don't think people would be like, wow, what a masculine man about him in the year of our Lord 2026, which is funny considering that he was like the paradigm of masculinity in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think right now clean shaven is pretty in, but I will say
I do still think the fuckboy mustache. I do still think the fuckboy mustache is in though. Every man in Williamsburg's got a mustache, baby.
But to me, that is like the like old Gen Z, youngest millennials who largely have that. Like, I
agree.
I think most of the guys who are still doing the like normcore dad mustache are like 27 and older, certainly 25 and older.
Yeah.
What I have found interesting watching the season of Love Island with mostly people 25 and younger is that the goatee is back.
We were literally just talking about you and I were talking about this with two men, and they were who are both millennials, and they were sort of shocked by that. And the goatee being back is crazy style.
Yeah. And what does it mean? Will it stay? I don't know, because that's the thing. 2010s, I think, is very much defined by the hipster beard. I love how every YouTuber guy who had a beard, his merch was always just an outline of a beard.
100%.
Awesome. Informed attraction, it's going to be that, but it's going to be vulvas.
It's gonna be me and Aubrey's unclipped vulvas.
Yeah. Do you want that on a hat, guys?
You want a sticker? Put it on your water bottle. Put it on your Odwalla.
I feel like this episode we are getting so vulgar in a way we normally don't, but I'm feeling it. And also, is it really vulgar that we're just talking about hairy pussies?
This is my blanket apology for the fact that I, again, have been spending most of my time with between 13 and 18-year-olds for the past 2 weeks, and so I have slowly devolved into a 14-year-old boy.
So yeah, the main question that I kind of wanted to get into is it bad
we were talking about the millennial beards, and then we got the boy mustaches, and now maybe we're wrapping around to a goatee. I also think what's interesting though is I don't want to hang out with like a 21-year-old man, but maybe when I'm just like out at a bar in New York, I'm gonna see if I can start watching and see if goatees have been popping up. Because the other thing that I'll note is I feel like more distance between like we've talked about this before, like there's more distance between like the aesthetics of like celebrity culture and then like normal people. And so I would be so curious about like if like regular boys are adopting this or if it's just our reality stars. But I don't know. So I guess I'll just have to go like to a bar near NYU and just start doing some anthropological note taking.
Yeah, you should. I'm curious if this is something only I have observed or other people are feeling it too. So if you think that there is a specifically of like men under 25, if you think that there is credence to my goatee theory, send us an email about it at informedattraction@gmail.com. I really do want to hear what other people think of this because maybe it is more of just the overall clean shaven thing is still in, but I don't
Right.
know. I've been seeing some goatees lately among the young men.
Among the young, do I have anything about audience age data? Let's find out. Audience. So on Spotify.com, I do. I don't have it for our entire podcast, but I do for just our Spotify listeners. We have 13% of our Spotify listeners are between 23 and 27. So guys, if you have any information about, especially on the 23 side, any information about your age cohort, let me know.
Yeah, I'm super curious. So, the last point I really wanted to get into is like, is it bad to remove body hair?
Yep.
The short answer is no, probably
Okay.
not enough that it like super impacts your life. There are disadvantages, especially to different types of hair removal methods. So basically in the hair follicle, stem cells reside in the discrete microenvironment called the bulge, located at the base of the part of the follicle that's established during morphogenesis, but doesn't degenerate during the hair cycle. Basically, the bulge contains multipotent stem cells that can be recruited during wound healing to help repair the epidermis. And when you remove your hair, the bulge is damaged. That's like the main like argument against hair removal is that it can be like, bad for like the regenerative tissue of the skin on the hair which you are removing. And of course, hair removal can also cause skin inflammation, minor burns, lesions, scarring, ingrown hairs, bumps, infected hair follicles, and various issues related to that. But for the most part, like just shaving your legs or your arms, pretty low risk and not going to cause any major harm. Most hair removal methods are not permanent. There are many that can cause medical problems and permanent damage, like if you start getting lasered and if you get lasered in a way that is fucked up. And those more permanent methods tend to also have very high cost. And some of these methods are still in the testing phase and haven't been clinically proven. Like my mom works at a med spa and they have a bunch of crazy like hair removal shit with lasers. That is one thing. Didn't do any research on lasers for this episode. Maybe nothing will ever make me do research into lasers because to me, it's just a lightsaber. I don't really understand the laser and I don't really want to. I choose to live in ignorance.
I feel like what I will say is I get a lot of ads for like hair removal on Instagram. Like I feel like maybe if I scrolled right now, I probably would get one. There's one specific company that I'm constantly getting Instagram ads for hair removal, and it's like a Nair adjacent product. And
Interesting.
it is one of the few like things that I can tell you that I constantly get sponsored ads for on Instagram.
I never get sponsored ads for hair removal. That's so interesting. I literally wonder if that is like the Instagram algorithm sees that you have like darker hair on your face. Not like on your face, but like your eyebrows and your eyelashes.
Yeah, maybe. I'll scroll and see if I can get one because I feel like I get one basically every day. But yeah, I'm gonna briefly scroll on Instagram, Aubrey.
But yeah, in essence, hair grows because we are mammals. Everything else, the shame, pride, beauty standards, trends of it all, is just because we're human. I think whether you decide to remove your body hair and how is just a matter of personal expression, and it isn't really as cut and dry as armpit hair makes you woke and everything showers make you a trad wife. There's a long history of hair removal for various reasons, and I think this is one of those appearance changing behaviors where I really think just as an individual, you just have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And how would I feel if I didn't do this? And like, what is compelling me? And if the answer is just, shaving my legs makes me feel better about myself, I think that that's valid. But if you're afraid of the way that others will perceive you, particularly with a like lack of femininity, that's just like patriarchy and misogyny talking.
I am not getting any of the ads right now, but if I do, I will if I get one while I'm editing this episode over the next couple of days, I will McKenna from the future will chime in to tell you all about it. Aubrey, you didn't want to talk about my pedophile shit?
You said it.
Okay, great. Okay, if I may briefly have McKenna's pedophile corner. So
If you're not a pedophile, stop listening.
no. When I was in college, one of my first anthropology papers I ever wrote was about this notion that shaving your body hair is the wanting women to shave their body hair is connected to pedophile culture. And I have not reread this paper. I did send it to Aubrey, but I have not reread it. But basically, I will read you all my intro. As we grow up, we become aware of strict taboos about sex, the process of social learning, including bestiality, incest, and pedophilia. No one really needs to explicitly explain that these acts are wrong or taboo. We learn them through both intimate conversations and through television and movies. See, now it's about media again. However, recently there has been a movement to destigmatize non-offending pedophilia, meaning no sexual relations between a child and an adult actually occur. In 2015, Todd Nickerson wrote an article for Salon called "I'm a Pedophile, Not a Monster," in which he comes out as a non-offending pedophile and pleads with the public to not judge him for his sexual preference. Later, Allison Gray wrote a response article for Feminist Current claiming Nickerson overestimates the existence of a pedophilia taboo, arguing our culture in fact has a culture of pedophilia. It is obvious that our Western culture includes social structures which reward women for self-infantilization. However, she attributes the entirety of female beauty standards and body ideals to the male gaze, neglecting to recognize other motivations for beauty. In addition, she attempts to establish a universal masculine psychology, or at least one completely abided to by all Western men, without accounting for cross-cultural concerns. And the big case study I use in this is what she has to say about body hair, where she basically argues that if you shave your body hair, you are engaging in pedophile culture. And I do pretty vehemently disagree with that, because I don't think that the act of a woman shaving her leg hair has to do with pedophile culture. As we have seen, like, there are other roots of this, like people thinking about it for hygienic reasons and things like that. And so, I can understand where that notion comes from. I just don't think it's 100% accurate, and that we can say if you shave your leg hair, you are participating in pedophile culture, or that norm 100% comes from our like culture of pedophilia. Do I think that there is a much more due burden on women to appear young? Yes, 100%. That is way more a burden placed on women than on men, but I don't think it's as strongly like pedophile. And I say that in a time where like the Epstein files exist, and like I still think that the majority of men are not attracted to young women and young boys.
Well, right. I would really cite it more from an influence from pornography than from like pedophile culture. This isn't to say that it, like McKenna said, I think that we really do live in a climate where like youth is prioritized, but I do just think it's problematic to imply that an attraction to hair that has been removed implies a sexual attraction to children.
Right.
And I think that adults can prefer hair removal while still being exclusively attracted to sexually mature adults. It's one of those things where I think like we have to examine the like whys, like why is this a norm? I think especially if we're thinking about like pornography, thinking about the like free love of the 60s and 70s to the transition into the corporatization of the 1980s, and the way that like trends in like genital hair expression changed at that time. I mean, like, I also do think too that the tides are changing, and I think people now prefer genital hair. Yeah. So I don't know. like, I understand why this argument has been made, and I think it is absolutely rooted in some reality that, like, we have a culture that really likes to sexualize young women, and we have had a history in the United States of people in power abusing children, but I don't think that that means that, like, if you were a man and you have a preference for a woman with a shaved vagina, like, I don't think that that makes that man, like, a pedophile, or, like,
Yeah.
I don't think that implies a sexual attraction to children, and I'm fine, like, being 10 toes down on that. I think that we can critique, like, why that is a trend, without necessarily saying, like, people are pedophiles.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is Aubrey, I feel like the media study that's truly, like, honestly relevant in this conversation is pornography.
Yeah.
Like, I do think that that is actually, like, what I mean, we've talked about, I mean, in the context we talked about porn before, like, was in the Goth Girl series, and it's like, I noticed as the Goth Girl pornography was showing up more and more on these websites, that was then affecting my interactions with men, right? Like,
Yeah.
that was affecting my interactions with men, as that became like as the big titty goth girlfriend thing became a more and more prevalent thing on ye old pornhub.com. Like, that then became a thing that I was then interfacing more with, like, on dating apps and things like that, right? And I think that similarly, like, I think the idea of, like, a lot of body norms for women come from and are reflected in pornography. It's like, so many women in porn are completely clean shaven and have completely flat stomachs. And I will say, I think a lot of my personal anxiety around body hair and flat stomachedness comes from the idea that that is what will make me sexually attractive, because for a very long time that was the only body type and body hair situation reflected in mainstream porn. That is changing. There are in both much more women in mainstream pornography who have body hair, and in addition, there's also more like women who are not flat stomached who are becoming, like, more relevant porn stars in our current time, which I think is really interesting, and I think also has something to do with, like, the rise of, like, more like most of the popular porn videos on the internet right now are not from, like, big porn production studios. They're from individual creators, which means that then, like, in a way, like, regular people are having more influence on the type of porn that are being created, as opposed to, like, these huge production studios like Brazzers that have, like, a very specific idea of, like, what people are going to want to see. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about porn. I think it's a fascinating topic, but like, also say that, like, I think the media study here that's actually the most relevant when we're talking about body hair in this day and age is commercials, like the Gillette thing. That is, they realized they were going to be able to market that to women way more than they were going to be able to market it to men, and that's why that was the campaign. Is by saying that body hair was gross. Women, shave your gross ass body hair. And I don't think that came from, like, look like a baby by shaving your gross ass body hair.
No.
And then I think it also comes from porn and
like, the racism of it, right? Like, you
yes.
want to look like a smooth, white, delicate doll, not
Right.
something else that would be considered obscene. I also do feel like the need to mention, like, when we talk about, like, pedophilia and, like, pedophiliac culture, like, I think it's really useful to talk about it in this, like, feminist lens, and, thinking about, like, how does our culture that upholds youth, like, create an environment where young women are sexualized and abused.
Right.
And also, like, pedophilia is, when I say pedophilia is, like, its own sexuality, I'm not equating it to a sexuality the way that we typically think of it. What I'm saying specifically is that, like, pedophiles are attracted to children broadly.
Right.
That is why, like, pedophiles who abuse children tend to abuse boys, girls, whoever is near them. They're not really picky about, like, what kind of child they're abusing. They are sexually attracted to children.
Yeah,
so,
and it's just about who they have access to.
Exactly. So, like, I also just want to be careful in how we talk about this, because I think there's sometimes this implication of, like, like, there are two things that exist at the same time, where we do have, like, pedophilia and we have children who are being abused, and we also have a media zeitgeist where youth is prioritized.
Right.
And, like, like, people who are attracted to very young women, and again, this is not even trying to get into like the fucking pedophilia versus androphilia thing or whatever, but it's like, I do think that there is a distinction when we're talking about attraction to youthful looking women versus like actual children.
Right.
And I think that's an important distinction to make.
That's part of why I disagree. I still do really disagree with that article, because it's like, I don't think the idea in the dominant culture is to make a woman look like a child.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the idea is to make her look prepubescent.
No.
Like, that is a thing that, like, I just don't think that, like, even if you take the extreme of these guys who are like, I can't, like, touch a woman who has no body hair. Like, I still don't think that's coming from a place of, like, I just don't think it's coming from a place of pedophilia.
No.
I think it is coming from this weird obsession with purity culture.
Right. Well, I think if we want to attach it to media figures, I think it's where, like, Lana Del Rey was considered very sexual and sexualized, whereas, like, Melanie Martinez wasn't, because she went so baby with it that, like, it wasn't sexy, and that was kind of her point, right? But, like, Lana Del Rey, it was the, like, angsty teen of it all, whereas, like, Melanie Martinez went, like, child, and that was not. And the same thing with Sabrina Carpenter, right? Is that she's going, like, vampy teen, not baby.
Yeah. And I even think that she isn't even, I feel like she is so trying to not be teen, because
she just looks very youthful. She's young and has big eyes and looks like a doll. Like, she's going to look young.
If Sabrina Carpenter came out on stage with full frickin' armpit hair, I don't think that would be weird, because I don't think it's a part of her aesthetic to try to look young. She's like constantly in like tiny little outfits on stage. You know what I mean?
Well, right.
Like,
she's a tiny little person.
I don't think she's trying to look like a baby. I think she's trying to look like vintage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, like, there is, and it's such a difficult thing to talk about in this time, because we do have a president of the United States who is probably just an actual capital P pedophile.
He is.
Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, obviously pedophiles exist, and pedophiles exist in positions of power, and the reason why people who are pedophiles seek out positions of power so they can have access to children, like, that is just like a thing that it is true. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't think that, like, every man who I've ever had sex with, or every man I know who has asked me why I don't shave my armpit hair, is attracted to children, or that his curiosity about that is coming from a place of, like, why don't you look more like a child?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really interesting idea just to get into, is like the difference, because there is like a line, I think, of looking youthful and looking childlike.
Yes.
And I think that when that line is crossed, I actually think that culturally people are like, ooh.
Yes, I agree, because it's what I say in the
at least modern culture, right?
Yes,
not unfortunately, like, I think of who was the supermodel who was doing stuff when she was like 11 and people were sexualizing her? The one who was in, I think, like Blue Lagoon or something like that.
I got nothing for you.
Is it Brooke Shields? It might be Brooke Shields.
Yeah, Brooke Shields.
Yeah.
If it's Blue Lagoon, it's Brooke Shields.
Yeah, like, she was like a baby in that movie.
Oh,
basically.
yeah, when she appeared. Oh, she was when she was 11 years old. She was in a nude scene shot in the film Pretty Baby.
Yeah, and like so, like, I do think, and that also too, like, controversial. Like, I think that when we talk about, like, the experiences of, like, Brooke Shields, who was sexualized when she was a legitimate child, I think sometimes there's a tendency to broad strokes it as, like, it was in a movie, so everyone thought it was okay. And it's like, no, it was actually, like, wildly controversial.
Yeah, and I think we see the same thing with, like, obviously we see all the time grown men trying to make arguments that, like, a 14-year-old girl is capable of seducing a grown man. But I don't feel like we see a lot of, like, cogent arguments like an 8-year-old girl is capable of seducing a grown man. I think people try to make those arguments. People absolutely attempt to make those arguments about like specifically precocious girls, but like I don't think that they are as like mainstreamly accepted as I do think that people do tend to mainstream accept like the idea of like 14 and 15-year-old girls being capable of that, but that also
Well,
has
it's
to do
with
with
that like pubertal development, right? Like it
yes.
is like this idea of like she's become a woman.
It's always about adultifying those girls. Yeah. I think as a woman you can't win because as when you're a teen girl, you're being adultified by grown men around you, and then when you're an adult woman, then you are being you need to be childified by the adult men. Yeah, and thank you. That is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it's like I've noticed since I've, left my mid-20s that like the dating thing has gotten different, and this is not to say any of this is not a prizing of youth, or I don't like. I mean, listen, if I was dating a guy who was like, I really need you to shave your body hair, I would throw things at them because I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, I 100% agree with Aubrey's point that like I think we need to be very careful with like when we're throwing around terms like a culture of pedophilia, because I think that just has a very specific meaning that like we should be cautious of.
Well, right. I don't want to water it down because it's like the culture of pedophilia is the fact that our president like raped children.
Right.
Like I think that it's that the president raped children. I don't know that it's because like women in general tend to shave their body hair. Like
right.
that's
yeah. And like that those come from two very different places, that like the attraction to a child and the impulse to shave one's body hair are not coming from the same place.
Right.
But yeah, I have long thought about that. I mean, I wrote that paper in 2017, and I've long thought about this, and it's like, and especially as I've gotten older, I'm always kind of thinking about it and stuff like that. And I also work with kids, and so I'm obviously thinking about that. And I think it's just a really interesting thing that really comes up when we're talking about body hair, because I mean, I don't know, Aubrey, when did your mommy say time to start shaving?
I had to have been 11 or 12, but my mom would take me to get waxed. I didn't shave for a long time because basically as soon as I started to have body hair, my mom would take me to get waxed or wax it at home. She had the misconception that if we started waxing me like as soon as I started to grow body hair, that I just would like stop growing body hair, which is not true.
Not true. My fun fact is I've never been waxed ever. Not one time ever.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I probably would prefer to have my armpits waxed than to have to shave them. But now I don't really care. So
Right. Yeah, it's for me it was not like I started growing body hair and my mom was like, "Razor, get rid of that shit now." It was very much when I hit the age when it was like you might want to start dating, you look more like a woman, cuz I've always described for a long time that like my body really kaboomed into being a woman much before my face did. And it really wasn't until I started losing my like sort of like more childlike face that my mom was like, okay, let's maybe talk about shaving.
Yeah.
And even so, like I was never given shit for not shaving. Like if I was like unshaven for some reason, my mom wouldn't like give me shit about it, which I do really appreciate. So for me it was actually more, despite the fact that my mom is someone who shaves and definitely like told me to shave, it was never a pressure to shave from her. It was definitely much more a pressure from like the dominant media culture and of like, you should shave because you are a girl. Yeah.
Any last thoughts about body hair removal for men, women, other people? What's going on with non-binary people? Just no shaving?
Well, no, this is a really interesting thing to ask, actually. I think there's all sorts of thoughts and feelings about it among AFAB non-binary people, because it's like, it just kind of depends on where you're sitting on that spectrum. I think what's really, really fascinating for me is actually more a conversation about non-binary folks who were assigned male at birth, because I think that can be, God, we should have had SMJ come on to talk about this. My friend SMJ...
Next episode!
Yeah. My friend SMJ is someone who is non-binary and was assigned male at birth, and they for basically the entire time I've known them. I have seen them clean shaven a few times, but for almost the entire time I've known them have had a big bushy beard. And they really like their beard. They think they like how their beard makes their face look. They like having their beard, but they feel this extreme pressure to shave their beard in order to appear more androgynous, more non-binary, and that people don't take them as seriously as being non-binary because they have a beard. And so I feel like for AFAB non-binary people, which this is another thing that I could talk about at length about like the inherent sort of fucked upness amongst non-binary people about like how it is much easier for someone who is AFAB non-binary to be accepted as non-binary than it is for someone who is AMAB non-binary to be accepted as non-binary. But so I think that like really I would say that like,
well, it's because male is the default, right? So for like I'm not saying this to say a non-binary person is a woman. I'm using an example, but like when a woman just does, like when a woman dresses in just a basic like t-shirt and jeans, that's masculinizing because it's just male is sort of the assumed default, whereas somebody who is a man, it is just assumed default male, so there's just so much more that has to be done in order to cross into femininity.
Right, but then when you hit a certain point, then it's like I feel like for so many AMAB folks, your option is to be a man or to be a trans woman, and it's actually quite complicated to be actually perceived as non-binary as an AMAB person.
Well, and I think that's a difficult thing with being non-binary in general, right? Is that I think there's a pressure to like perform like perfect androgyny.
Yes.
And that's also like just not really possible.
Yeah, and I have just found even within queer circles that is much more possible if you were born female than if you were born male.
Right.
And it's a really interesting thing. And
well, it's like Billie Eilish, right? Like Billie Eilish wears like large clothes and like is able to take on an androgyny just by wearing big clothes. Whereas like somebody, you know, like Jake Gyllenhaal, in order for him to like have an androgynous look, like that androgyny, because male is the default, ends up being man in a dress rather than feminizing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just back to the body hair thing, like I think that like the conversations I've had with SMJ about this have been very interesting because basically they feel like they're in this like rock and a hard place of like, I like how my beard makes me look. My beard is really important to me. However, it is also perhaps the biggest roadblock to people actually viewing them as non-binary. And so I do think that body hair can be pretty neutral for a more femme appearing non-binary person, but I think is not a neutral conversation at all for a more mask appearing non-binary person.
Right.
And I think specifically if you are someone who naturally grows facial hair and identify as non-binary, it's not an easy question. I think if you are a non-binary person who naturally grows facial hair, that is probably the biggest piece of contention in non-binary, in being perceived as non-binary, is, I would say, facial hair. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think it's because, Aubrey, to your point that we've been talking about, like, facial hair is so associated with masculinity to the point that, like, if we think about, like, freak shows, the bearded woman is a staple of the freak show, right?
I love the fat bearded lady. I can't wait to get a fat bearded lady tattoo on my body. I love her so much. Because the thing with also too, like the sideshow acts, the fat bearded ladies who I could talk about forever, is that they didn't just come out and be fat bearded ladies. They would sing beautifully and entertain and tell jokes and comedy because they didn't also just want to be looked at as freaks. They wanted to be valued as entertainers, and they were. And I see the beauty in them.
Yeah, and so I just think it's really, I feel like, you know, I see why you got so interested in thinking about facial hair specifically, because I think that, like, we talk about body hair a lot. I think especially as femme people, we talk about body hair a lot because it's so contentious. There's so much, like, obvious pressure about your body hair as a femme person from both other femme people, if you are a femme person who dates men, from the men who you might be dating, from the fact that like every celebrity you see is completely hairless and nubile, like that is, I think, a thing that is well discussed, but I don't think as much we talk about facial hair in regards to both genders, and about the fact that like being a more hirsute woman when it comes to your facial hair is like a very big deal, and people are very fucked up about it.
Yeah.
And then for men not being able to grow, I mean, so many men are so insecure about not being able to grow a beard, right? Like that's like a huge insecurity for men. And when men do have a beard, and I'll say it can be really jarring when someone you've known the entire time you've known them has a beard, and then they shave, and then it's like a different face.
Yeah.
I've told this story before, not on the podcast, but Aubrey, I'm sure you know this. I dated someone in college who had a beard, and then he shaved it down to a mustache so we could be Daniel Day-Lewis and a milkshake for Halloween one year. And it genuinely really kind of fucked me up because his face was just shorter than it had ever been, and I was like, it's my boyfriend's voice coming out of a face that I kind of don't recognize. So there's that aspect of facial hair that can be really, really crazy. And I think we then get into this thing for then, you know, non-binary people who grow facial hair for where it really becomes a contentious issue.
Right.
And there's also the religious aspect too. There's so much with like facial hair in particular that I think is just like so crazy and kind of under discussed because it's less connected to a perceived pedophile culture.
Right.
Yeah. And less obviously tied to like sexism. So
Yeah.
that's what I have to say about beards.
Interesting stuff. I love a beard. I love a facial hair. I love a hairy man. I love it. I have a husband who has a beard but doesn't have chest hair.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know why I phrased it that way, as if you would be lying about Josh having chest hair.
Yeah, no, I don't, this is actually my own ignorance. I don't know if that's just like an interperson, like within his family genetic thing, or if that is like a like Filipino genetic thing.
Yeah, I don't know either. I literally, and I mean this so genuinely, could not tell you what's going on. Like I'm thinking about all the men that I've dated, and some of them I'm like, oh, obviously had chest hair. But when I say some, I mean a single one, because my second serious boyfriend ever, Daniel Day-Lewis guy, was just an incredibly hairy man. But I'm picturing every other man I've seen naked in my head right now, and I'm like, I have no memory of what was happening hair-wise.
My first boyfriend was also a hairy man, and I loved it. And I mean, I am into hairy people. Ended up marrying someone who is like not super hairy, and that's okay. And
Aubrey
it
will
takes all
begin,
kinds.
Aubrey is going to start feeding Josh testosterone and rubbing Rogaine all over his body in order to get Josh to grow more hair. We're actually going to enlist Josh in the military so that he can be a part of Pete Hegseth's testosterone program for soldiers, because that's what makes me proud to be an American, where every man is forced to be hairy, except for in the military, then you gotta shave that shit. Goodbye.
Bye.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.